I am 26 years old and I do not have any friends. Now, when I say that, I don't mean it in a lonely way. I went into isolation about 2.5 years ago at this point. And it was due to obviously circumstantial situations that just drove me more towards God. And it really broke off at 18 years old. I went to jail. I had a certain situation that I was dealing with, and I was in a relationship at the time. But during that relationship, that was when the process really started. It was about like 17 going on 18 when I met this girl, and through the process of our relationship, I just started to see a decline in all of the friendships that I had growing up. And these was guys from like 3rd grade all the way up to high school, past 20s, right? Like I said, it started at 18, and that's just kind of what I want to keep the base at, and then just incline the story from there. I'm in a relationship. I go through certain things. Now, while I'm in a relationship, I'm also still heavily involved in my friendships. But as time went on with the relationship, I started to spend more time with my girl. And to be honest, that's a whole different story because it wasn't a healthy relationship. We was both young. I don't, throw salt on it or on her as a person because we was young. I don't know what she acts like, talk like, move like now. I don't know if she's still the same person or whatever the case may be, but I know I'm not, so I know people can change. And then on top of that, I didn't talk to her in about 4 or 5 years. So during that time in the relationship, there was a lot of conflict between who I wanted to be as a person, where I was headed in my life, the people that were surrounding me, the relationship I was developing with her, the relationship I had with my family, and just the relationship that I had centered around God because I was born in the church, so I was always familiar with the spiritual aspect of life. Around 18 years old is where I was still heavily in the streets. I was still heavily kicking it with my homies. I'm in the hood every day. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and things started to catch up with me, and I ended up going to jail. I ended up fighting the case for a year. I came out a felon, right? Now, during that time, I had an expectation for certain things and certain people, which was not fair. But I was so young-minded and I was so caught in the lifestyle I thought I was living, or the people that was around me who I thought was really for me. And at the end of the day, we was all just young and growing up. That's kind of like what things started to get a little shaky in my relationships, because I started to look at niggas a certain way when they couldn't come to my aid when I had a problem going on, a genuine problem too, right? When things get real, that's when you're really going to see who in your corner. I didn't see nobody in my corner, and as a matter of fact, a couple things before that kind of threw me off too, but I can get deeper into that another time. Things got shaky after I got out of prison, after I started fighting my case. And I wasn't in prison, I was in the county to be specific. I don't want to get it wrong. I started to notice people move different, especially because of the relationship I was in. But when I tried to accommodate both sides of the playing field, meaning my friends and my girlfriend, it conflicted all the time, and I really didn't have any room to make a decision for myself because I was always playing the middleman of what people seen me as, or what people wanted me to be, or just the position people wanted me to be in life in general. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you don't set a standard for yourself, if you don't set any kind of boundary for your relationships or the people that you involve yourself with on a daily basis, people will set these standards for you, and then you will have no control over who you are as a person, and eventually you'll lose yourself. People go be people at the end of the day, and that really ain't your concern. Time goes on. The relationship doesn't work out. This is really about isolation right now, so I want to keep it centered and focused on isolation. This is what drove me towards it. So I'm with this girl, right? And after the whole jail situation happened, I started to look at my guys a little funny certain way, but I'm still kicking it with them, right? I'm still doing some of the same things that I was doing before I went to jail, before I got caught up in this whole situation, and before I even met Shorty. So I was still caught up in this lifestyle of rebellion, this lifestyle of just downward spiraling, to be honest with you. And I really wasn't doing it all for the strength of that's who I was, but let anybody tell you at that moment when they knew me, that is who I was, because that's the environment I grew up around. These are the cats I'm hanging around. This is what I'm used to. These are some of the normalized standards for the environment that I live in, for the people I'm around, right? So it just made sense to me that this is what I should be doing. And as time developed, I'm also getting a grip on a relationship life. So I'm understanding certain concepts that don't even exist in real life. As far as this is not normal. Happy wife, happy life thing. Just trying to make my girl happy as I could be. And I was so broke at the time, bro. I couldn't even really benefit the relationship. I was getting taken care of. I'm being so vulnerable right now. I was being taken care of in a lot of ways, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I did pull a little weight. I was young, bro, I swear to God. So I was just trying to make my girl happy. I just wanted to make sure we was good, we was tight. At the same time, I still had like a little tight-knit circle, even though I'm looking at them kind of funny, you know what I'm saying? I'm still hanging around some guys. And some of the people that I did fall off with along the way, they still connected to these people. So it's inevitable that I hear about them or run into them or whatever the case may be when it comes to being in these environments that just influences a mindset that I didn't even want to develop because it's not who I am as a person. I experienced a lot of cognitive dissonance when it came to these relationships because I used to do things, again, that I know for a fact I honestly didn't want to do. I would go rob somebody and be like, why the f would I do that? That ain't even my life. Since I've been a little nigga, I had a guilty conscience. So it was like, why the hell would you go rob this nigga? And you know for a fact that ain't who you is as a person. You know for a fact you got a moral compass in your brain and you got a guilty conscience. And you know for a fact these things don't just happen without no repercussions or consequences. So I started living life on the edge. Then I got to watch my back all the time. Now I got to carry guns and now I got to do this and that. And if you in tour with my homie, then I'm in tour with you. And then we got to go break some bread. But we don't want to work a 9 to 5 because niggas can catch us lacking. So we might as well just go ahead and scam and do all this BS. And you see what I'm saying? It's just a whole downward spiral. And it was a domino effect that just led me on just a simultaneous spree of bad decision making. And these decisions just was not edifying to my life at all. It even leaked over into my relationship. I started stealing cars. My shorty helped me steal cars, bro. Just to help me steal cars. It was so crazy, bro. Ultimately, I'm the one who made these choices. You know what I'm saying? People was just around to influence them. I'm getting a little tight. All right, so look, with all that being said, things just started spiraling out of control. I wasn't really in the driver's seat of my life. Of course, again, I'm young, so it's understandable that I'm going through these learning phases, these failures, these tribulations, and these trials, and I'm just getting the grip on what relationships are and just kind of growing up. But something in the back of my head, obviously I know at this point it was just like the Holy Spirit, it was God calling me. He set me down because when I went to jail, I talked to him, right? That's the day I truly gave God notice. I actually experienced God in the midst of all of that, right? And so as I'm going through this whole process of slowly eliminating these distractions, slowly gaining my own will to think for myself, slowly gaining purpose, I'm still going through the fires of hell, right? Fast forward to the end of 2020, December 31st, a 4 to 5 year relationship ended. Me and Shorty broke it off. At this point, I was still hanging with a lot of niggas that I knew I just didn't really have nothing in common with no more. But I'm still hanging with them. I was such a codependent nigga. Like, I was conditioned to be codependent because people really made it seem like I needed them. And I always grew up getting praises and stuff like that. Back when I had like a super smooth face, back then I got a lot of attention on me. You know, and I had like a lot of popularity and clout, and people used to validate me all the time, and I never was looking for it. So it was like those validations got me to cling on to people because I feel like I needed it to survive. Me and Shorty break up. And that was an on and off thing for maybe like a year and a half. But once we really separated, we was done. So in my head, I'm thinking, where do I go from here? I didn't know or understand that this was the most significant piece of knowledge, piece of experience that I would have received in my teenage years into my early 20s. Because after we broke up, it was a domino effect. I had to learn how to be okay without shorty. I'm watching a page every day. I'm slight trying to hit up. I'm going through phases where I'm crying, bro. I'm going there and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I really went through a heartbreak, and it was young love for sure, you know, because a whole lot of BS happened in the relationship, but it was young love for sure. Like, I thought that's what it was. So I go through all of that, right? I'm still hanging with these cats. I'm still doing my thing. But the damage was already done in those relationships from that relationship that I had with her. She like me and the homies, bro, we broke off bad off of that relationship. And I'll just be 100. That's definitely what it was. So I already had God as my foundation. And I wasn't like fully heeding to his voice. But he worked with me where I was at. I started to focus more on how I could be better. And initially, I'll be honest, it started as I want to be better so I could get her back. But it makes I want to be better so I could shit on her. You know what I'm saying? But that wasn't it. I grew out of both of those mindsets by the grace of God, because he shifted who I was as a person. He changed my mind about a lot of things. Changed my heart about a lot of things. So some of the stuff that these guys were still getting into, I lost the desire to be in that kind of lifestyle, to be around that kind of environment, to be around them kind of people. We started branching off because just certain things that they was on just wasn't comfortable. I wasn't comfortable with no more. I don't want to carry guns no more. I don't want to be in the hood, posted up, doing drugs, none of that. And so some of the first few things I was dealt with was some of the decisions I was making. And for a long time, I struggled with that because I'm thinking like, well, why am I making these decisions if I'm not okay with them, if I'm not cool with them? And I'm like, why can't I just do better? And I started to notice it was a cycle that I was in. I might be doing okay for a minute, but once I start to hang out, or once I start to do this, or once I indulge in this, then this is what's really going to start throwing me off track. And then I go right back to square one, and then now I got to restart, and I build myself back up just for it to fall back. So it was like a cycle. It was like a literal cycle. And I sat back and I started to pinpoint certain things. So things just started to get cut off a little slow for me, right? And this is before I realized isolation was the way, right? My isolation period happened 2 years ago. This was maybe 2 years before the isolation period, right? Before the 2-year time skip type vibe. Well, before the, like One Piece, you know what I'm saying? When they went from Cyborg OD to you there for the grade. But anyway, pre-isolation, I was just seeing and figuring out so much about where I was in life currently. Not where I wanted to head, but where I was. And I just came to grips like, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want to keep working these 9 to 5s just so I could blow my bread, blow my sack on some weed, so I could still live with my OG in her apartment, so I could still be a part of this statistical demographic of being in the hood forever, or not being able to elevate, or staying stuck in minimum low wage and being. I don't want to do none of that. I don't want to do none of that. And I started realizing that a lot of the things I was getting into was just distractions, bro. They was hindering me. As I stopped coming around and hanging out, I started to notice certain things about myself that I just wasn't even really cool with. I'm like, why I keep smoking? I don't even like smoking like that. It's just a cope. I started smoking at 11 years old, bro. It took for me to realize at 24 years old, that's 13, 14 years later, that smoking wasn't it. By the grace of God. And once I stopped, it only went up from there. I'm not lying. That's when I truly figured out it's time to isolate. Because I seen the benefit of what one small detail can change in the trajectory of your life dramatically. First, I stopped hanging out, right? So now I can focus a little bit on work. I ain't got to call off to go kick it on the block or go kick it at a party, which I ain't making money yet. I ain't getting no bread at these functions on the block. I ain't getting more money than I'm making on the clock, if I'm getting any money. Just being brutally honest. These niggas ain't got no kind of ambitions. We ain't talking about no businesses. Oh, for no grade, we ain't talking about elevating. We talking about ops. We talking about girls. We talking about goofy stuff. Like just real trivial, lame, typical teenage, adolescent vibes. In our 20s though. We sitting here watching niggas live their dream, talking about our favorite rappers, watching niggas be successful and not be. Hey, oh bro, though, like being brutally honest, it was just straight bum activity, bro. And I don't really fault no nigga for that, because I was so caught in this matrix of like ride and slide and being okay with it. But once I grew out of that mindset, I took a seat in the back and I started to see things for what they was. And that was the ugliest truth that I had to realize. But once I realized it, I'm like, well, how can I change it, man? Oh God, well, how can I change it? So I started praying more. And I remember specifically, I'm working these jobs. That was another thing. I couldn't hold down a job for anything, bro. To get to this point, I had to go through a few more jobs. I remember the last job that I had, I lost it, right? Due to, say, my own negligence. And on top of that, it was due to just a less conducive environment. I got comfortable. I started to complain. I wasn't grateful to God for the opportunities he was providing in my life. Yes, a 9 to 5 is a blessing, especially in this economy right now. These opportunities don't just float by when you just a regular person getting by in life. I'm not talking about the scammers or the niggas who getting money off the swipes and all of this and that, but I'm talking about niggas who live in a modest life, who trying to, like, little by little. You know what the Bible said about that? You know, he that gathereth little by little shall prosper as much, or he that is rule over little shall be, you know, and rule over much. Man, or he is, you know, you get the point I'm making, right? Anyway, what I'm saying is, I wasn't humble enough to accept the position I was in life, which is why I was doing a lot of those cognitive dissonant decisions makings that I was doing with all these cats, you know what I'm saying? And I couldn't think for myself for a long time. So anyway, fast forward, I started to take a back seat. I started to see what needed to be changed, and I slowly started to make those changes. My last job, I got fired, right? And I remember I got fired in February, I think February 3rd of 2014. For that 3-month period, I'm talking about March, April, and May. Wait, no, yeah. For the 3-month period of February, because I got fired early February 3rd, I think. So February, March, April, I was so locked in, bro. Because when I first started getting, hey, now look at that. I live by a train. All right. Anyway, for those first 3 months of that year of 2024, I was so locked in, bro. And I can even say before that, because I got that job in around like June of April of 2023, which is what made a big shift for me, because that's when I left Five Guys, which is in 2022 to 2023 early. It's crazy how this timeline is starting to like become with me, right? So from 2022 to 2024, I was getting that personal experience of who I was in life. I started building my own relationships through work. I started meeting new people. I started doing all this and that, and I started hanging out less in the hood. 2024 came, or 2023 came, because when I was at that job at Freddy's, I locked in so bad. I was getting so much money off that 9 to 5, bro. I started getting too comfortable. I started getting mad and flustered at the job because I was going through some things, I'll be honest. I was pretty much running a whole store as a goddamn shift manager for months, because niggas couldn't hold their job and their position down as an AGM or GM, bro. Bro, back to my point. At that time, at that job, I was already isolated, right? That's when the isolation really began for me. It was the end of 23. Nope, it was the middle of 2023. I locked in heavy. I locked in super heavy on, bro. I wasn't kicking it with niggas. I wasn't talking to nobody. I still had my social medias, but I was so locked in. Okay, wait. I got the job at Freddy's in 2023 in like June. After that goes past, I'm making good money. I'm making decent money. February comes around. I get fired. February, March, April, I was so locked in on my Bible. I got down on my knees. I started to understand it even more after that. I'm like, God, and I did in the middle of that too. Like, I was getting my spiritual edifications while I was at Freddy's, but I was doing so much dirt. I was still like doing like stuff. I was heavily, oh my God, I was so heavy in the fornication at that job. It was crazy. You know what I'm saying? That is another story. That whole job was a different experience for me. But no, for the great. It was a blessing in disguise because it brought me more closer to God. So now I'm at the point where I'm not just saying I got a relationship with God, or I'm just doing these little fragile prayers, or I'm not just listening to people on YouTube. I actually got in my word, bro. I read Proverbs for 3 months straight. Nigga, that's when I realized it's time for me to cut off a lot of stuff. In February of 2024, I realized it's time for me to cut off a lot of stuff. I stopped smoking. I stopped doing drugs period, because I got on shrooms pretty bad. I was doing lean pretty bad. I popped a couple pillies. Like, I was on stuff bad, bro. And so I cut off all of that. I got off social media. I deleted my Facebook. All of the social medias that I was heavily involved in, I got off Facebook. That was the hardest thing for me to do because I had so much clout on Facebook. I had a lot of people that I knew. I had a lot of attention on them. I cut it off. I started cutting off bad vices. Like, let me cut down on my TV time. Let me cut down on my screen time. Let me start waking up doing stuff a little more different. Let me stop eating all this fast food. Let me actually care about, my acne was so bad last year. I still got like acne scars and all this and that, but I'm getting better. I'm telling you about it. I'm only getting better. But anyway, when I first started the isolation period, I was geeked for it though, but I had to get drove to a point where I actually decided, like, I'm isolating, like I'm locked in. Before that, I didn't know what I was doing. I might have started to slowly distance away from stuff, but that was really God just kind of like sitting me up, underlay for overlay. Because it was so easy to go into my isolation process once all of this stuff was just happening. So after that, my thinking became more clear. I was able to make better decisions. I was able to stay more focused on tasks. I was able to figure out what it was that I needed. I was able to cut off all those distractions. And while I'm not perfect, I've gotten like so much better at direction, in my self-esteem, in my confidence, in my decision making, in my direction of life, bruh, and my relationship with God first and foremost. I invited God to do his work in me where I'm at. Isolation is necessary for you to develop your own character. Do it with God though. That's what I advocate. And even if you don't start there, get a sense of who you are, not who the world wants you to be. You gotta go through some hardships alone. You ain't gonna have the friends with you. You ain't gonna have mom and them backing you up. You ain't gonna have nobody there but you and your balls, nigga, and you just gotta let it hang on photo. I'm nowhere near where I want to be in life right now, but I'm nowhere near where I used to. That's straight up a fact. Like, the development that I had so much in my life, bro, it done drove me to a place of security in myself, because I know things ain't perfect and I know that they will never be perfect. But at the end of the day, I've gathered, I've learned, and I'm still learning. I'm still gathering. I've got the concept of what the foundation is. I can continue to grow from here. I'm going to continue to go from here, because if you already started at the bottom, it's only one place to go, nigga. I swear to God. So, isolation, bro. Back to the point. I lost the desire to do a lot of the stuff that I was into when I was an adolescent, that I was into when I was hanging with them folks, that I was into when I was kicking it with shawty. I wasn't inclined to spend money on her. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't inclined to roll up the wood for phone. I wasn't inclined to tote that gun and slide on the oppas. I wasn't inclined to go to these parties because my mans want to get it cracking because I'm bored. I wasn't inclined to call off work because my mind is on money and building a steady stability. And oh my God, I wasn't inclined to get in there with these hoes because I want to be a married man. And the foundation of the Lord, though, that's one of the most important things that I feel like need to be taken from the whole isolation period. And we gonna go through seasons of isolation. Ecclesiastics is a time for everything under the sun. For fellowship, for separation, for love, for hate, for peace, for war. Come on. Come on. For real. At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway from my isolation is that I was able to get a foundation. My foundation was in the Lord. Your foundation could be in the Lord as well. I'm only here to plant a seed when it comes to Jesus Christ. But in a practical sense, you can definitely develop and get better in just growing in life when you take a little time away from the noise. When you take a little time away from them folks. When you take a little time to be uncomfortable. To get away from things that you're used to start developing a sense of who you are as a person, to start trying new stuff. You know, you got some bad habits. We all develop bad habits as we get older due to the environment, the way we was raised, people around us. Get away from all that for a season. Lock in, on phone, lock in, figure it out. Really understand what needs to be coming out of your life. What fruits are you need to be bearing besides the fruits of the Spirit? You know what I'm saying? What do I need to do to change the trajectory of the path that I'm on right now? Especially if you know it ain't looking good. Especially for all my hood folks, my hood babies, my trench kids, the people who didn't grow up in the best situations around the best of people. And we especially need to lock in on this, especially because we get so stigmatized, we get so desensitized to just the development of life for real due to what circumstances we was raised under. Some of the things that we see growing up, some of the people we be around, some of the mindsets that just rub off on us. You hang around 5 robbers, you bound to be the 6th nigga. And even if you ain't, birds of a feather flock together. So what people go do? Associate you with them niggas. Come on. Come on. I'm here to advocate for the isolation period. I love isolation. Woo! For real, for real. I just got real excited, but you know, praise be to God, bro, for real. And the journey only get up and go on from here, man. I hope somebody find this like confirmation to something that you already thinking, bro, because I ain't nobody to be acting like I got it all together. I'm learning right with you. I done looked at countless videos like this. I done looked at I done studied the Bible so much, bro. I got a lot of questions, and maybe that just make it easier for somebody out there like me just to get a little move on. What you supposed to be doing, handle your business, man. Go into isolation, man. Cut all that BS out your life and start to lock in, focus on what you need to focus on, man.